Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast. With me today is a good friend and fellow podcaster, Dr. Jesse Green, and we're doing another dual episode where Jesse's going to use part of this on his podcast and I'll be using it for Podiatry Legends. So, how you doing, Jesse?
Really good, mate. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here and glad to have you on our show as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
And anyone, if you want to go to my YouTube channel, Tyson E. Franklin, and you watch the video of this, you'll get to see what Jesse looks like and the antics that he did when I was trying to do the introduction, which is a little bit difficult. And today we're going to talk about focusing on your wins and not focusing on your losses.
So, Tyson, why is it, do you think, that people tend to focus on losses so much?
No, because they hurt, but they reckon it's just well, it's scientifically proven that our brains automatically, it's just the way we're wired, that we focus on we overvalue losses and we undervalue our wins. So you can have a number of things go fantastic all week. And how many times have you had a fellow colleague say to you, "Oh, I had this one particular patient and it ruined my week"? Yes.
You can have a perfect week. I mean, in podiatry or dentistry, you can see every patient, it goes brilliantly, but you get that one.
Yeah.
And it does. It messes with you, doesn't it?
Well, I read something years ago and it was some advice somebody gave to me, and they said, when something happens with a patient that might just get right under your skin, instead of letting it, and that might be your first patient of the day, instead of letting it ruin the whole day, is give yourself half an hour and say, I will let that ruin half an hour and then I'm going to move on. I'm not going to let it ruin my whole day. And from the time of doing that, it actually made a huge difference.
I was traveling recently and my daughter had a few headaches and hassles with a friend, and I said, okay, you've got until lunchtime to be cranky, and then after that we're going to get on with our holiday. And I think you're right. If you put some boundaries around that and not let things ruin your whole day, but maybe give it half an hour, it does give you the opportunity to move forward, and I really like that.
Yeah, well, I think if you don't express the I don't know if this is a word, pissed offedness.
It is now.
It is now. It should be in the dictionary. But if you don't allow yourself to be annoyed with what happened and you try and bottle it up and just get on with the day, I think that's what can ruin the day or a couple of days. Whereas I think if you allow yourself, no, I'm going to be really annoyed for the next half hour and then that's it. I'm just going to switch off and get back on with it. Maybe that's why that works.
I think it does, and I think the reason for that, Tyson, is, over the years I've read so many different kind of books on, mental strength and, being positive and all that sort of stuff. And it's easy to take a message away from some of those books or even some of the gurus out there speaking. I don't think they necessarily mean it this way, but it's easy to interpret it as, hey, I've got to be positive all the time, I've got to be upbeat all the time. And that then means you're limiting your emotional experience. And humans are designed to feel the full range of emotions and to try and suppress those emotions. Doesn't mean that the pissed offedness, if we're going to use that word, goes away. It just means we're suppressing it and it's still there. So I think you're right. I think it's good just to kind of purge it, get it out, give it some space, give it the half an hour, and then hopefully get on with the day.
And then move on. But I think when it comes to the like overvaluing losses and undervaluing wins, it's probably also like there might be recency bias in there as well. That when you have that loss, it's so recent, you sort of carry it with you. And I'm sure if you had a major loss, but then you had a major win straight afterwards, maybe you wouldn't notice the loss as much. Yeah,
look, I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. But one of the things that I have found in dentistry, and I would imagine podiatrists are pretty similar, perfectionistic by nature and so on. And in dentistry, we spend 5 years being trained to find fault. And so, we look at a mouth, you guys look at feet, and you are automatically drawn to what's not right. And so what I feel with dentistry as well is that loss bias or that imperfection bias, we are trained and honed. And if you're not like that to start with, you certainly become like that as a dentist. You notice these things so much more and you place weight on those things. You do a filling and it's perfect, but maybe it just doesn't quite look right in a particular light or reflection or whatever, and you go, oh man. And so we put more emphasis on that little micro loss compared to the 99.9%, which is great. And I don't know, do you reckon perfectionism's got a place in there?
Yeah, it could be. Also, it could be drilled into us through our whole education system, that when we go through who gets the awards, the people who've got 100%. They don't make mistakes. The people with the best marks. So when you're going through university, they're teaching you a whole pile of stuff we're never going to use in life, but you can still fail. Yeah, you don't pass a particular exam, and all of a sudden you're classed as a failure.
Yes.
Not that I didn't retain irrelevant information.
Yeah, because I didn't regurgitate the facts. Yeah, maybe I can think critically, maybe I can solve problems really well, maybe I can do all that brilliantly, but because I didn't regurgitate a particular fact in a particular way to suit a particular lecturer, maybe I'm now, according to the university, a failure.
Oh, no, I remember having a discussion, a heated discussion with one of my lecturers once.
Oh, yeah.
And I had an exam and I didn't get the result that I wanted.
Yep.
And I said to them, I thought I would have got more. And they went, well, you didn't. I said, well, I'll tell you this way. I said, in 6 months' time, without any preparation, put this exam in front of me and I bet I do better than most of the people in this room. I said, because a lot of them can just regurgitate facts to pass an exam. I said, but they're not the sharpest tools in the shed.
Yeah, I know. And how did that go? Out of curiosity?
Oh, it didn't go over very well at all. No, it didn't. I was fighting a losing battle.
Yeah. I always think arguing with the university lecturers is probably not an easy path to tread when you want to get through your degree. But anyway,
yeah, if you compared it, if I was a professional fighter, the amount of discussions I had with my lecturers, yeah, I was like none for 10. So maybe it's an education system. It's just life in general that everybody values. When you don't succeed at something as well as what everyone's expecting, then that it hurts.
And maybe we anchor our emotions to that. Maybe that's where it kind of gets conflated and inflated in our mind. That we overemphasize that loss compared to the win. Tyson, does this happen in podiatry? I'd be really interested, because in dentistry, we might look at someone's teeth and we might do a really beautiful cosmetic makeover. Someone's had real challenges smiling. They've been embarrassed, ashamed, self-conscious, whatever it happens to be, to smile in public. And then we come along, we do what we do. They're smiling for the first time in ages, and the patient's in tears. They're really emotional, and they say, thank you. And we go, oh yeah, no worries. We're not really good at celebrating that win or taking that compliment, right? Why do we struggle with that then?
What, compliments?
Compliments and celebrating that win. You go, you know what? I really did change that person's life, or I really made their day, or whatever it is. That's a win.
Oh no, I used to celebrate if I had a patient who had a lot of pain when they come in, it was stopping them from doing a particular activity or being with the family and doing certain things. They came back in after treatment and they said, I'm so glad I came here. You are fantastic. You've changed my life. And I'd always say, I told you I was good. Okay, now you tell everybody else. You go out there and tell everybody else how good I am. Okay, the best thing you can do for me, I said, to tell everybody else how good you found the clinic and just everything in general. So no, I used to take it on board. If they said I'd really fix them, I would go, thank you for telling me that, but I told you I was going to.
No, well, that's good. Well, maybe that's just maybe that's a me thing, not a we thing.
No, someone's probably listening to this and go, no, that's just Tyson's arrogance. But it's one of those things, though, that not every patient will. Well, if you had a patient where you didn't get the result you wanted, once again, you would focus on that and forget about all the people you've helped in the past. The other 50 people that came in that week who were singing your praises, and then you get that one that you haven't been able to fix, and it bugs you. It can bug you over a whole weekend.
Yep, it sure can. So,
but what I wanted to talk about too was how this relates to people just making decisions in their business, or taking a chance, or trying to guess or plan for the future. Sometimes past losses can hold us back from making future decisions.
Well, because I guess we're still thinking of the pain of that previous loss, right? And I think that's the thing is you go, well, geez, I'm not going to do that again because it hurt so badly, and therefore you don't make that decision. You don't take that swing, and you're not in the game. So what's your thinking?
They said it's scientifically proven that if you and I were to make a decision on something today for next week,
Yep.
probably 100% chance we will be right.
Yep.
It could be like a business decision, or say, for example, you're looking at your schedule and you're trying to figure out how many staff members you should have on next week.
Yep.
If you and I sat down and looked at it, we'll probably be 100% accurate on the amount of staff we need next week. If I said to you, no, let's do a roster for 6 months, and who's going to be on in 6 months' time, it's going to be a lot harder. In fact, they reckon as time goes on, your chance of being right is a lot less. And when you go like a year out, it could only be, you might only have a 20% chance of actually being right. So people tend to not make plans or prediction for the future because they're scared of being wrong. And what they've got to accept is, no, you're going to be wrong. It's scientifically proven you will be wrong. But if you don't take the swing or take the shot, you'll never know.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it? Because, you know, for every successful person that I'm sure you can think of, and certainly I can think of, they've taken a lot of shots, they've had a lot of swings, and they've probably missed more than they've got. I remember, I'm going to butcher this, Tyson, but there was a quote by Michael. Appreciate the confidence. Now, ladies and gents, this is now really encouraging me to go forward and make the decision to share this.
Yes.
No, but
I can't wait to hear it now.
Yes, it's not that good, don't worry. But it was about Michael Jordan. And there was an ad on TV about how many shots he'd taken, as you know, a bazillion shots he'd taken. He'd missed so many of those shots, you know, 60, 70, 80%, I can't remember. But the ones that he'd actually made and scored, you know, were the ones that allowed him and the Chicago Bulls to win all those championships over all that long period of time. But his point was that if I didn't take the shot, it would have been none from none. And I think that's the what you're getting at.
Well, that's exactly it. But when it comes to planning for the future for your business, I think a lot of podiatrists, dentists, every profession, sometimes they wait too long before making a decision. And when they because the fear of being wrong. So in podiatry, for example, I always say to people, you should be really looking at your clinic in the future. What key numbers do you need to look at to tell you that what your trajectory is going to be when you will need a new podiatrist to join your team? And a lot of times people wait until they need a podiatrist to join the team before they actually
start interviewing.
Yeah. All of a sudden they're desperate. I need to get a podiatrist. And so does everybody else at the start of the year. And they wait too long. Whereas you could pretty much, I used to be able to look at my clinic and go and take a guess that I reckon by this time we will need someone. So this is how we set up this program. We used to sign up students at the end of the third year to actually come and work for us, because we would already we knew that we were probably going to need someone at this point in time. Sometimes I was wrong, but more than often I was right that we did need them. And if I didn't need them, it was always good to have a spare. Yeah.
So what gave you the confidence then to take that decision, even though, you know, there's a chance of being wrong?
It was a calculated decision. It was looking at the numbers of my business. I'd look at how things were growing, and month by month and quarterly and yearly upon the other years. So you could see it slowly growing. You think, well, if it stays on this path, then I know at this point we're going to need another podiatrist. Plus the person that's been with me, more than likely, I've known from past people that have worked with me that at this point in time, they're probably going to leave. If they're on a 2-year contract, they sort of give you a hint that they're only going to stay for the 2 years. So you can learn from your past experiences and also your future projections, and then take a punt.
So, Tyson, you bought me a book a little while ago called Thinking in Bets.
Yes.
It's a great book. And one of the things that I'm picking up from what you're saying, though, it ties into that. It's about probabilities as well. You've used your past experience as a guide. You've looked into the future. You've made an assessment based on probability, not just possibility or absolute fact. And you've weighed up those probabilities of going, okay, well, I've got X number of podiatrists now. Based on my current growth projections, I know that I should be needing a podiatrist at such and such a time. I'm confident in those projections because I've done that in the past. I know that this particular podiatrist may leave, and therefore on the balance of probability, weighing up all of those facts, I'm confident to make that decision moving forward, knowing that it's possible that I'm wrong, but also probably going to be right. Is that kind of essentially your thinking process?
Yeah, and I also, by looking at my numbers and understanding the numbers of my business, and if I brought that person on and somebody else didn't leave, then I went, okay, I now have an extra podiatrist. What can I do with them?
Yes.
And I knew it way ahead of schedule, so I would start putting things in place. And Dave Freeze, a good friend, he always says, stop doing what doesn't work and do more of what does work.
Yeah.
And that sounds really silly, but a lot of business owners, clinic owners, keep doing things that aren't working, or they have equipment sitting there that they never use or isn't profitable, yet for some reason they just keep pushing it. And I think this comes back to they don't want to be seen that they made a bad decision.
Yeah, and look, going back to your capacity planning process, I think you're absolutely right. If you know what does work, what doesn't work, it's the same process we go through in dentistry, by the way. The slight difference we have in dentistry is we have infrastructure considerations as well. So we've got a plan for chairs and plumbing and blah, 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 blah. To your point about stop doing what's not working and do more of what is, again, you're going to need to be able to look at the cold, hard facts and go, okay, how do I objectively assess what's been a success and what has not been a success? And one of the things that I find in business as well is people get caught up in stories and they want something to work so much that they justify in some ways a not so great result and kind of redress that as a success in some ways to justify the original decision, rather than actually really critically thinking and going, I bought that new piece of equipment on the understanding I was going to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, in dentistry, it might be a CEREC machine. In podiatry, maybe it's orthotics. I'm not sure, but
Yeah. I love it when you take a guess about podiatry. It's always fun.
It is good. I'm looking forward to your cricket analogies in a moment, because we're going to pull those apart in detail. There is a bias around justifying that original decision, and that we don't always look at what is and isn't working clearly. And I like that comment of Dave's, because it sounds so simple, but it's not easy.
No. The reason people keep hanging on to things is because they're not prepared to say, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Or I was wrong. And because of that, they just keep hanging on to it. It's like trying to flog a dead horse. It's not going to work. So they hang on because they think, well, if I admit that I was wrong, what's that say about other decisions I've made in the past or my future decisions? And then that affects their future decisions, because they know they've made a mistake, but they're not willing to admit it, and it holds them back from making that next decision.
Yes, 100%. Do you think in the dead of the night, though, people really know whether they've made a mistake, or do you think they genuinely kid themselves, or they know they've made a mistake, but they just don't kind of openly admit it to themselves or outward?
I think majority of people, when something is not working or they've made a mistake, I think majority of people know.
Yeah, me too.
They've just got to be willing to accept it and move on. Or they say, you know what, I really stuffed up there.
Yep.
Move on from it. Like, I've made plenty of mistakes in my business. I mean,
I've had some spectacular failures.
But I've learned to just move on from it and try to think of it. Some of them still haunt me every now and then. Every now and then they just raise it and you go, oh, that's true, I remember that mistake.
Yeah, but does it impact your decision-making moving forward?
No, it's made me wiser. I've used past mistakes as a learning curve for future decisions.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because I think it's important to understand we all make mistakes. As I said, I've made some spectacular mistakes. I've made some investments that have been, great looking investments.
Oh yeah.
Only to see that money vaporize and go, oops. And yes, it hurts. And yes, it does make me a little more circumspect about what I do. But I think, like you develop a decision-making process, and you develop a set of mental criteria as I go through evaluating things based on those past experiences, so that my hope is I'm making better decisions moving forward. So in my mind, when I'm evaluating decisions, I've got a couple of filters that I go through based on whatever it is I'm thinking about. Again, I'm trying to do what you do, and that is to use past experience, line up the probabilities, do all those sorts of things, so that hopefully my decision-making effectiveness, with a bit of luck, improves over time.
Yeah, I had someone talk to me recently, and they said, a staff member left, and they said to me, I knew they were going to leave all of a sudden. I knew they were going to leave suddenly without much warning. And I went, well, if you knew that, why was it a surprise?
Yeah.
But I said to them, what you should do, knowing that now, I said, I used to have, if people listen to this podcast enough, they know I have a brain book.
Yes.
where I start a new book every year. Been doing it since 14th of April 2000. So it's been a while. So every year I have a brain book, a whole pile of them. And I said to them, sit down and note down every single hint that you thought led to them leaving. I said, and then use that for the future. I said, when you start noticing things about people, go back to your brain book, and you'll probably find that everyone follows the same pattern. There's a similar path before someone leaves.
Yes.
And other mistakes, other things that just go wrong, whether it was a marketing decision or another business decision, when it fails, instead of complaining that it failed, is learn from it and go, okay, what were the warning signals leading up to this? Or what decisions were made leading up to it? What can I learn from it? And buddy, write it down somewhere so you can come back to it later.
So here's something for you, Tyson. All my bad ideas started out as good ideas. Now, that's a quote I picked up from Keith Cunningham, right?
Yeah.
All my bad ideas started out as good ideas. I've really embraced that. And what I've noticed for me, and I think in dentistry this happens as well, usually an adverse outcome or something that didn't quite work out has been underpinned by some assumptions along the way. So as much as you're saying go back and look for those clues, I agree 100% with that. I'd also go back when you're making decisions and ask yourself, well, what was I thinking and what assumptions did I make that proved to be incorrect or invalid? Because then it hopefully addresses our thinking process. And if we can identify those assumptions and go, well, that didn't stack up, then again, write it down if you have a brain book, if you're one of Tyson's listeners and you're using a brain book, or if you're one of our listeners and you're using a straight out journal, which doesn't sound anywhere as sexy as a brain book.
Does not sound sexy at all.
Yeah, it doesn't, does it?
No, brain book sounds so much better. Anyway, run with journal.
Run with journal.
The rest of the world does.
Yeah, well, actually, I have a book called Random Thoughts. I
see random thoughts, yeah.
I've got random thoughts. That's what all my notes. I've got to tell you, I do it in my iPad still. But anyway, that's a conversation. But random thoughts, brain book, journal, whatever it is, and just examine your thinking and go, what was my thinking that led to this? Where did that go awry? What didn't stack up? One of the things I want to ask you about, Tyson, this is going back to the book Thinking in Bets, which I know I'm probably meandering a little bit, is in that book, Annie Duke, the author, makes the point that a good decision can still lead to a poor outcome.
Oh, yeah.
This ties into decision aversion later. She made the point that with all the information available, you've got to make the best decision that you can, and that may prove to be right or wrong. And she spoke about, sports and all the rest of it. And there was a particular football game where, the coach made a particular call and everything stood up. This was the right decision to make. But on the day, there was an intercept or something and the play didn't work the way it was meant to. So
I remember that. A 2% chance of it going wrong.
Yeah, and everyone crucified the coach because it was the wrong play, But if you step back and go, well, the decision was sound, but the outcome wasn't. I think going back to your comment about, this loss and overemphasizing and its impact on future decision is, I think we've got to be able to separate the decision from the outcome and go, okay, I didn't get my outcome, but it was actually still pretty good thinking.
Well, it's no different to sometimes you can let a staff member go than when you've let that staff. And I'd done it where I had podiatrists working with me and I'd let the podiatrists go because they were just not a good fit for my team anymore. They were being disruptive, disrespectful. Their work was fine and they were bringing in great money. But in my business, I wanted more than just someone who could earn money. Yeah. Teach a person the right way, they'll earn money. But it's hard to teach attitude and positive thinking and teamwork. So I remember letting someone go once. When I let them go, it put so much work on everybody else that at the time I'm going, have I done the wrong thing here? That this person was a full-time podiatrist, they've gone and now all that workload has come onto everybody else.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm thinking, I think I've made the wrong decision. Long term though, it was the best decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes you can doubt that you've made the right decision. It may result in something bad for a period of time, but long term, you can actually learn from that.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
And what you said too about good ideas, there's another quote I read once that said, a lot of good ideas gets in the way of a great idea.
Oh, ouch.
And I'm not, because I would always come up to my wife and say, Christine, I've got this really good idea. And she'd go, is it good?
Or is it great?
Or is it great? And I go, it's just good. She goes, put it aside.
Wise wife.
Don't focus on it too long. So give it a little bit of time, but don't focus on it too long. And that was really sound advice from my wife. Yeah, and then I read the quote later that good ideas get in the way of great ideas.
I love that. Love that. And your wife is very wise, of course.
Well, she married me. Hey, can I tell you another story quickly?
Yeah.
Was a podiatrist I was doing some work with wanted to expand the clinic into a particular area.
Yeah.
Want to set up another clinic over here. And everything, all the reasoning behind doing it made sense. I went, that makes sense. However, if I could just be the devil's avocado for a sec, I said, what if this happens? And they went, oh, well, that probably won't. I said, but what if that happens? If this podiatrist here leaves, what impact will this second clinic have on what you're doing? They went, it'd be devastating. I went, well, I personally wouldn't do it. I said, I can only give you advice. I can just tell you based on my own experience. I wouldn't do it. Anyway, they listened to me and didn't do it. And I could feel them sort of going, they felt they missed out on this opportunity.
Yeah, a bit of FOMO.
Yeah. 6 weeks later, person left.
Oh.
And they went, thank God I listened to you and I didn't do that. And now I joke about it with them all the time, is I often bring it up as an example of when we're making decisions on certain things.
There's a whole risk analysis in that, right? Which is what you've been through. And so the questions that we ask as dentists when we're making business decisions and, when we talk to our coaching members or our board members is, what's the upside? What's the downside? Can I live with the downside? And can I mitigate the downside? And so in this particular podiatrist case, well, the upside is he's going to have his second clinic. He'll have more leverage. He'll have more money. What's the downside? Well, a podiatrist leaves. Oh, crap. Can I live with that? No, I can't. Can I mitigate that? Maybe, maybe not. And then that really does inform that decision. And in this case, it was lucky that he listened to you, which is great.
And it was based on my own experiences of doing certain things when I had multiple clinics around the place, and if a podiatrist left, the amount of extra work I put on me as the business owner, that I had to pick the tools back up and dive straight back in, which was not part of my plan. And therefore that affected me growing the business in other areas because that's not what I had on my schedule.
No. Yeah, it forces rethinks and it forces detours in your plans, and that can be quite costly. So
this leads us on to, I want to talk about a cricket analogy.
Giddy up.
For our American listeners, cricket is a funny game that Australians and people in the Commonwealth play.
Yes.
And it's sort of like baseball, but not.
Look, and to give you context, you can play for 5 days and get a draw.
Yeah, how ridiculous is that?
It's not.
And as you'll see, Jesse is a mad cricket fan, and I am not a cricket fan. I went to the baseball for the first time last year.
Yeah, it was good.
Loved it. And I had a cricket person tell me, baseball's so boring. I went, you are kidding me. You are kidding me.
So I'm just going to say this out loud, okay? Cricket is a thinking man's game, Tyson.
Yeah, I like cage fighting.
I know you do. Some total blood sports, man. I can't watch it. I just feel sick watching it.
So anyway, our cricket analogy, and this comes back to overvaluing our losses and undervaluing our wins. In cricket, for example, if a cricket player, and I sort of understand the game a little bit, even though I had to remember if they do a shot, they don't swing the bat.
Your brother was a cricketer, mate. This is the thing.
I know, and I watched him play a couple of games and I fell asleep. It was just I couldn't do it. So if a cricket player has a couple of ducks in a row where they score nothing.
For the Americans, that's scoring 0 runs.
0 runs, which is not a good thing.
No.
You at least want to make something. But if they do that a number of times, all of a sudden those past losses can affect their future games, and they start to tighten up and they don't take as many shots as what they used to take. And the thing that they've got to understand is they are in total control of the attempts that they take. It's really up to them. Yes, the ball needs to be in a certain zone for them to hit it, but it's up to them to then make the decision to take the shot. And sometimes even in business, people are too scared to actually take the shot or go for it.
You're right. There has to be, there is a zone, right? And so you've got to make sure that the ball is in your kind of hitting zone. In cricket, there's a discipline about knowing what to hit and what not to hit. And when you've gone through that run of ducks and your confidence isn't what it used to be, your decision-making, your judgment becomes you start to doubt it, and therefore you're either playing at shots that you ought not to, or you're not playing at shots that you could. And as you say, you are in control of the number of swings or the number of attempts that you make. But the thing is, if you don't swing, you're not going to win, right? And so there's a big difference between trying not to lose and playing to win. And sometimes in cricket and sometimes in life, sometimes you just got to stay in the game long enough to find your form and your rhythm and not do something silly and get out. But there is something in cricket where this is why I love cricket, because it is such a mental game. And of course, the bowlers do everything to try and muck up the batsman's concentration and decision making. But as a business person, there will be decisions that you'll be trying to make, and there'll be uncertainty, there'll be doubt, and you've got to make a decision of, do I go for that or not? And to your point, mate, is if you've been, bitten on the backside a couple of times, bitten on the bum a few times, and had a few things go wrong, then you're a little bit gun shy. You're a little bit reluctant to get in the game.
Oh, it's true. And they said there's actually a mathematical formula or serendipity, for luck. And it's the more swings equals more hits.
Yeah.
That's pretty much, it comes down to Michael Jordan's thing before. The more shots he takes, the more chance he's got of it going in. You can't miss the shot you don't take.
100%.
They say that people only remember your most recent wins anyway.
Yes. And you were talking off air about Richard Branson. Do you know, have a guess how many business units he has or has had over the years?
A lot. There we go. There's my measurement.
A boatload, right?
A lot.
I heard, now this is not verified, please don't go and fact check this on me, but I had heard it was in the vicinity of 300 or 400.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
You'd probably guess that out of that 300 or 400, there was a couple of notable failures. Anyone remember Virgin Cola?
No.
No,
I don't remember it.
No, exactly.
Must have had a huge impact.
Well, that's exactly right. Pretty substantial flop, but as you say, we only remember him for his successes. Yeah,
and I know when he had Virgin Records, that was actually failing miserably. It was not going very well at all. And then he came across this crazy band, which used to be one of my favourites, called the Sex Pistols.
Ah, yes. I thought you were going to say Mike Oldfield and Tubular Bells. I thought that was up your alley.
But that actually ignited the business. So then he started changing the formula. That he needed to get bands that were a little bit more edgy.
Yeah.
And that just built up the whole reputation of Virgin Records.
He had some failures, but then he signed the Sex Pistols. I think he later signed the Rolling Stones as well. And everyone remembers him for those successes. And so to your point, we forget, other people forget our losses. We don't, but other people forget our losses and they remember our wins. And that's kind of nice in a way.
Well, it's good. So people that are like listening to this now, if you've had some major failures and you're thinking, wow, people think I'm silly, or people think I'm not a good business person, just remember, the people on the outside looking in, they only remember your wins. So it's you that holds on to the losses and carries it with you. Yeah, whereas everybody else, they just see you as a success if you've done a few successful things in the past.
And on top of that, most people aren't thinking about you anyway.
No.
So
it's true.
We tend to hold ourselves back unnecessarily. Sometimes we get caught up with what other people think, but in actual fact, they probably aren't thinking about us. If they are thinking about us, they're remembering our wins, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's great. So when it comes to making decisions or deciding to do something, one of the biggest things I picked up at Business Black Ops in October last year was when they said the longer it takes you to do something, the less chance you've got of actually doing it. So if you've had an idea, go, I should do this, and you're sitting on that idea, waiting for everything to be perfect before you actually do it, there's a curve that actually shows that you've got less chance that you will actually do it. It'll just always be, I coulda, or I shoulda. Well, they say if you keep saying I should do this, I should do that, you end up shooting all over yourself.
Apparently you do.
So what they were talking about, they said sometimes quality is sometimes irrelevant. And I know, like, when it comes to desk, I'm not talking about the quality of the actual work that you're doing, but when you've got an idea and you want to get it started, sometimes it doesn't need to be perfect. Just get it started. And then you can tweak it and improve it, and you can tweak it and improve it. And he gave a really good example. And he said that when you're, this was Andy Bustamante, who said this, the CIA spy who joined us for 4 days. Andy was saying when it comes to sometimes quality is sometimes irrelevant. When you're really hungry, when you're really, really hungry, you can go home, go and get all the ingredients, sit down and take 2 hours and cook this a magnificent meal. He said, or you can just have some ramen noodles.
Yeah.
He said, now ramen noodles may not be as nice as a fantastic steak that you end up cooking or making something amazing in the kitchen, but it serves its purpose when you're hungry.
I love that. And I'm gonna follow it up with I'm a member of a program around health and fitness, Tyson. And one of my favourite quotes from Ollie, the guy that's running this program, really nice guy out in New Zealand, is his saying is half-assed is better than no-assed.
Yeah.
And so, start, get it done, do what you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. Half-assed, if I, go out and I'm trying to lose some weight or, get fitter or whatever it is, go for a 3K run, even if I can't do the 5K run, or do, at least some of the reps or the sets of weights I've got to do rather than doing none. And so I think, to your point about getting started imperfectly, is that prolific, that action, that momentum that comes from taking action just leads to the next action, to the next action. So you walk a mile and you see a mile, you're iterating as you go, and it's getting better just through doing it. And I don't know about you, Tyson, but I can't think of a single thing I've done in my life that I've done perfectly first go.
Yeah, I'm the same. Pretty much everything was, first attempt may have been okay.
Yep.
But then it improved the more that you do. It's just the repetition.
Yeah, but if you don't take the shot, you never start.
Well, it could be whether you're using basketball as an analogy, or even we'll go back to cricket again. In cricket, for American listeners, sometimes it can come down to the last ball, and the person needs to hit a certain, needs just 2 runs or 1 run to win the game.
Yep.
Now, this is the only time cricket is exciting.
And this is after 5 days. This is after 5 days. This can happen too.
5 days. Everyone's been sitting there. There's sweat running down their back because they play it in summer as well, which makes no sense why it's not a winter sport, because they're standing out in the sun all day.
Yep.
And it comes down to that last ball, and all they need to do is hit 1 run or 2 runs or something from that last ball. Now, it doesn't matter where that ball is being pitched or bowled.
Yeah.
Pitched. It doesn't matter where the ball is being bowled. The batsman is going to go for it.
Yeah.
Because he can't just stand and go, no, I'll just block this one, because you've lost the game.
Yep.
And also the person bowling it can't bowl a wide or bowl a stupid ball over his head, because then they'll lose the game.
Yes.
So that, like I said, that's when cricket is exciting. But this comes down to, it doesn't matter how ugly the shot is that he does, he just has to take the shot.
Has to.
And then sometimes he'll hit it and the fielders stop it and they don't win. And other times they hit it and it just happens to fluke it and they win the game.
Yep.
But if they don't take the shot, they're guaranteed losing.
And that's the thing, is a lot of people go through life trying not to lose. And I think that if you can get into the game and take a swing and make a decision and try not to let those past hurts hold you back, then you're going to be okay. But hopefully in life and in business, I love cricket and I love it when it comes down to the wire like that. But oftentimes in business, we're not necessarily in the, right down to the wire kind of decision, life or death with our business. Oftentimes the decisions we need to make are kind of earlier in the innings and going through. And so most of the decisions that we need to make are not those life and death decisions. And that probably, in some ways, Tyson, I think is what troubles people, because if in that cricket scenario, you've got to take the swing, right? I'm either going to lose or win, but if I don't swing, I'm guaranteed to lose. But most of our decisions are not quite so cut and dry. Most of our decisions are to use another cricketing metaphor, are in the corridor of doubt. There's not always that life and death contingent. So sometimes we can then go, oh, don't worry about it, I'll wait for next time. I'll wait for the next one. I'll wait for the next one. And then we get into the habit of not making a decision and we lose.
Well, using a baseball analogy.
We are really
not a baseball analogy, but it's more along the lines of, we've got a share that a friend gave me when I was at a podiatry conference, and it says, live life like a 3-1 count. And it's got baseball museum, something on the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much in baseball when it's a 3-1 count, 3 balls, 1 strike. When this ball is pitched to you, you just go for it, because there is no bad outcome.
Yeah.
It's just no bad outcome. You cannot lose by going for it. And I think a lot of business owners, podiatrists, dentists, every profession is that there's a certain point in your career with your business, you just need to go for it.
Yeah.
You just have to make decisions and just go for it. Don't sit back and keep waiting that, oh no, I just want it to be absolutely perfect before I go for it.
I've got a client, Tyson, they've recently expanded their clinic from 6 dental chairs to 12, which is just for...
It's a big expansion, yes.
It's a big expansion and a massive capital outlay. And
millions.
Yes, millions. And they just had to go for it. But they did all the things that you did. They looked at their past performance. They looked at this. They did all the evaluation. But they got to a point where they had to go for it. And they had to take that leap of faith. And they've done it. And they're just killing it now. Killing it. So I love it.
Yeah, I remember going from... I had in Cairns, podiatry clinic, it was 50 square metres, first one. Mm-hmm. Then I moved from 50 square metres to 90 square metres. Mm-hmm. And it was like, whew, that was a big jump. But when I made the decision, looked at the numbers, made the decision, business went up by about 30 or 40%.
Yeah.
Great. Then a place came up on the main road, 180 square metres.
Yeah.
We're going, wow, this is so much bigger than what we need. But we took the punt, looked at the numbers, thought, even worse scenario, I can still afford to pay the rent, live my lifestyle, and I'm not going to be affected.
Yep.
Moved, business jumped again by about 30 or 40%. Yeah, it just kept growing and I went, my God. Eventually the last clinic was 380 square metres. So, it was one of those things, it was all, if I could have easily said, I won't take the risk. I'm not going to risk it. I'm going to risk it for the biscuit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could have easily stayed back in that 50, 90 square metres and gone, no, I'm going to go to 180 because of self-doubt and start talking yourself out of it. Instead, I used past decisions and future projections to actually make those decisions.
Love it. And it worked out.
Yeah, fortunately, it worked out.
Yeah, but I think fortunately, but not surprisingly, because, I mean, I don't want to just have that throwaway line, Tyson, because, that was a very deliberate and strategic growth process you went through. There wasn't a fluke. There was maybe some elements of some lucky breaks happening along the way with what came up and when, for sure. Life does have those lucky breaks, but there was a considered process in there, and you went through a real decision-making structure, which I really, really appreciate.
Every person listening to this, regardless of what industry you're in, and I know it's going to be majority podiatrists, dentists, healthcare, is to remember that every big business, no matter how big it is, was once a small business. Every single one of them. They didn't just open the doors and were billion-dollar companies. They were started in garages and boots of cars, and they just say Nike. What was the Nike guys selling?
Yeah, Phil Knight.
Yeah, were selling shoes out of the back of their car at different athletic meets, and it just basically grew from there. I often tell a story about, was it Dr. Pemberton, who invented Coca-Cola? And in his first year of operation, he made $50.
Yep.
But he spent $78.78 in marketing. So he failed. The first year he didn't make it money. He could have thrown it in. He said this is rubbish and burnt everything and moved on. He ended up dying, but the person that took it over then started just building it from there until Coca-Cola is what it is today. So I think every business, podiatry business, every big podiatry business, every big dental clinic was once a solo one-person operation, and it just grew.
Yeah, and that meant along the way there were some decisions and some leaps of faith.
Yeah, and going back to the original statement about we overvalue our losses and undervalue our wins, I think the business owners, and you don't even have to have a business, it used to be your career. The people who do well in their career, I think, twist it and they overvalue their wins and undervalue their losses. They just turn it around.
I find sometimes, if I'm going to be really candid, Tyson, sometimes that's a harder thing for me personally to do. I am human like the rest of us. I tend to get caught up with the emotion of feeling the loss as much as anyone. But the thing that I have found in order to celebrate my wins better is to surround myself with people who can point those things out. So sometimes for people listening, they might go, oh, Tyson, that's great for you, mate, because you're a pretty upbeat, positive kind of guy. And you are. And I like to think I am too. But sometimes I think it's also really helpful to have other people go, hey, Tyson, good job, well done, mate. Or surrounding yourself with a peer group, that group of 5 that we always talk about. You're the product of 5 people who can actually remind you of those wins and celebrate those wins.
Yeah, it's true. I told you off air, I did a podcast recently, and when the person came on, all of a sudden just paid me all these compliments right at the beginning of the podcast. And it took me by surprise, and I felt a little bit uneasy when someone compliments you that way. But like I said earlier on, when a patient used to say it to me, I go, yeah, well, I told you I was good.
Yeah.
But in life, when it comes to what I do now, you get a compliment and it feels a little bit uneasy. But I think you just got to take all compliments on board, because I know right away, it doesn't matter how many compliments you get, there's always going to be the hater. There's always going to be the troll. That one person, when one person gives you a 5-star review for your book, there'll be another person that gives you a 1-star review.
Yeah.
I'm going to dedicate my next book to that person who gave me a 1-star review.
Yes.
Too.
I do think that there is real merit in that. And I think that, if you can just take that compliment, we did talk off air about that compliment you received, and you deserve the compliment. And I think, from all of us here, mate, I'll just be the person to point out, take the compliment, Tyson. Just take the compliment. Take the bloody compliment.
Yeah, sure. And anyone who's listening to this, I think you just need to find your circle of positive friends. Don't have to be in podiatry, doesn't have to be in healthcare, but just a group of friends that you can sit with and talk with. It when you're not feeling the best, you can ring them up and they're always going to make you feel better. That's why you and I, Jesse, we talk at least every week. We talk
every week,
at least.
Sometimes
a couple.
usually more. So much so that my wife asked me if we were having a bromance.
Only a small one.
Small one.
But it's one of those things, you just need to have that close group. You don't need to have a dozen of them.
No, you don't. Yeah, I do think, though, you got to have it. You got to have it, because sometimes I've got another friend who rang me up a little while ago, and he just said to me, Jesse, I just need you to tell me, what am I good at? And I asked him, what the reason for the conversation was, and it was exactly as he said. He'd had an adverse thing, something had just knocked him off his perch, and he just needed a friend to remind him of the things that he was good at, and he's good at a lot of things. And so we just went through and we made a bit of an inventory. And, okay, thank you. I feel just a little bit more intact, and off he went. And so I think that's what your friends are for. That's what your peer group's for. Just to remind you that. You got some good wins under your belt, some good skills, lots of good stuff going on.
Yeah, when I go to the event in America, we have this questionnaire thing we've got to fill out beforehand, and sometimes we've got to hand some of these questions to people we know who know us the best, and they have to answer some of those questions sometimes. Yeah, what are your strengths? And it's true, when you ask other people, what are my strengths? And they start telling you, it's a good reminder, because sometimes we can be really negative to ourselves. Oh, I'm dumb. I'm stupid. I'm a loser. I always do this. I always make this mistake. And that's a quick way to just spiral downwards.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So
instead, look in the mirror and say, oh, I'm awesome.
And you are.
I am, and so are you, Jesse.
And for all the people listening, you're awesome too. But
everybody is awesome.
Yeah, that's like the Lego movie. Everything is awesome. But I do think having that group of people around you is really important. Really important.
Jesse, I want to thank you once again for coming on the Podiatry Legends podcast, sharing your wisdom.
And I'm going to thank you for coming on the Savvy Dentist podcast, mate. Dueling banjos. Okay,
talk to you later. Bye.
Cheers, mate. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast. For more episodes, go to drjessegreen.com/savvydentist. And to discover how to build a high-performance dental practice, visit drjessegreen.com and download the free report.